So Omicron confirmed in the U.S. Just yesterday, the U.S. was the only destination in the world exempted from the new Canadian travel restrictions. All travelers returning from all other countries need to be tested when they arrive at Canadian airports. Are restrictions now coming for the U.S. travel? Joining me now to find out a little more, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. Minister, great to have you back on the program. Look, I don't know what you expect to hear, but give us a sense. Are you expecting to hear new border restrictions coming from the U.S. tomorrow?
Well, we're going to stay in contact with our U.S. counterparts, and certainly to the extent that we can continue to coordinate, have strong lines of communication around the public health care measures at our shared borders, then that will, I think, be in the best interests of both of our peoples. But the measures that we introduced yesterday are very prudent, they're responsible, they're informed by the best available advice that we're getting from our healthcare experts. And I would just point out to your viewers, this is not the first go-around for Canadians. They know what it takes to manage this pandemic, particularly when it comes to travel plans. We put in place some additional restrictions around those foreign nationals who are transiting around those countries of concern. We also reintroduced some additional mandatory testing, again, all informed by the best advice that we're getting right now. And the reason why it's important that we follow this advice, Evan, is so that we protect the progress that we've made thus far. Holiday seasons are all around. We hope for the best, but we also have to be prepared to deal with this new variant of concern, and those measures do that.
I guess the question is, why was the U.S. exempted from restrictions? I mean, there's already questions about, there's 10 countries all in the African continent, but, you know, the Netherlands has it, the U.K. has it, Japan has it. They were not exempted. Japan's closed all foreign travel, by the way. They can still fly to Canada. But the U.S. was exempted from restrictions. And I guess the question is, A, can you tell us why? And B, didn't you think that people would say, okay, we can't land in Canada from one of these countries, we'll just land in the U.S. and boost across the border and basically reroute around the Canadian restrictions?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Evan, and I would just point out that, again, the decisions around which countries are listed and which ones are not are informed by the advice that we're getting from our public health care officials, and we put a lot of credence, a lot of weight into that advice. The other thing that I would say is throughout the pandemic, there has been a significant degree of coordination and communication between Canada and the United States, and that those conversations will continue. And the last thing that I would say is that there is still randomized testing for some travelers who are returning from the United States. That's one of the layers of protection that we are building on many. And at the very bottom of all this is that our paramount goal here is to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And we will continue to do whatever it takes to do to achieve that goal.
Can you just open up this black box of the advice you're getting? Because I think Canadians would like to know why you can't, there's a travel ban on Egypt, why there's a travel ban on South Africa, but not on Japan or the Netherlands or the UK. What is the threshold here to have a ban? Is it epidemiology? Is it vaccine rates? Is it, like, what is it? Because we keep hearing we're getting advice. What's the advice? And you know, eventually the accountability is with people like you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of the above. So, for example, we do take a look at the epidemiological context in each of the regions and the countries that have been listed. We look at the degree of community transmission. We look at the vaccination rates. We look at the prevalence of the virus traced back to the variant of concern. And we take that advice from our public health care officials, and we use that advice to inform how best to respond to this new variant of concern. And what these measures do, Evan, is that it provides the government with some very precious time to learn more about the variant, to determine whether or not it's more transmissible or virulent, to determine whether or not there are more negative symptoms that can be attributed to it, and to determine, most importantly, whether or not the vaccines that we currently have approved are effective in protecting Canadians. And I think Canadians understand that. They understand that there are some trade-offs that are necessary when it comes to travel plans, and we've put so much work into this. And this will allow us that time to be sure that we can manage this new variant of concern.
Okay, well, look, everything depends on what happens tomorrow. If the U.S. decides to slap restrictions on the border, then we're in a whole new world here. So I don't know if the government's prepared to that. But can you just real quick, some details. Are you expecting massive delays at borders now? Because Canada apparently doesn't even have enough tests to do over 30,000 a day.
Well, I just say we're not going to spare any expense when it comes to implementing these public health care measures. And will there be some additional time at the border? Yes, there will, to be perfectly candid. But I think, again, Canadians understand that the trade-off there is their health and safety. And so that's the balance that we attempt to achieve. I will give a shout out to CBSA officers and other frontline officers. And I would, encourage Canadians to be patient. We're putting in place these measures because we want to protect you. And because in the past, when we have introduced measures, we've been successful at managing and containing the virus, and that's what we're doing again right now.
Minister, yesterday I talked to the Transport Minister at Montmoreau-Cabra. He wasn't sure then who will pay for the quarantine hotels if someone has to use one of these quarantine hotels. Then there was confirmed later in the night the traveler has to pay. How much will they cost?
Well, those costs are going to be laid out, but I will say again, this is a part of the trade-off that is necessary to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And we are providing supports to Canadians throughout this pandemic in a variety of ways, right, and we'll continue to be there to support Canadians through this new stage.
The reason I'm asking, Minister, it's urgent because somebody might have to do it within days. Last time it was like $2,000. People can't afford that. Are you saying this rule could change and someone's going to be hit up with a... Now, again, I know they're only at these hotels until they get a negative or positive result, but could it be thousands of dollars?
Well, look, there will be some costs that are borne by the traveler. They're necessary costs. But on the other hand, right, the government is bearing the costs of making sure that we provide tests, and most importantly, that we're providing everyone with free and safe vaccines. And the most important thing that I can just emphasize in conclusion is that we need to get everybody vaccinated here in Canada and around the world, and that's how we get back to life pre-COVID.
Two things. Will there be warnings, do you reckon, for people not to travel over the holidays, or older people or people who have immunocompromised? Or is Canada going to warn those people, be careful, don't travel over the holidays?
We're getting advice in real time. We have a whole branch of government, many branches of government that are studying this new variant of concern very closely. We're taking it very seriously. And, at the end of the day, our view is, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in the long run. And so the measures we're taking now are necessary. If advice changes, we'll be sure to communicate it.
Last thing, Minister, new variant, new concerns about supports for people, because there's now new concerns that we could go back into some situation. How does the government get new supports for people and businesses hurt by COVID when your government hasn't set up any committees yet to examine the bill that is needed, haven't released the mandate letters, haven't picked parliamentary secretaries? I'm just trying to get a sense. Your government said 2.5 months ago, it's urgent to get back to work. How do you pass legislation needed to help people when you haven't even set up the committees to study the bill?
Well, I'd say two things. First, we've been working throughout, even before coming back to Parliament as a government. And the second thing that I would say is that at every critical stage in this pandemic, we have had Canadians' backs. Whether you're a worker, a family, or a small business who's trying to get through, we have been there to support Canadians, and we will going forward. We know this has been a marathon, and we have made tremendous progress, in part because we have put in place the public health care measures that are necessary at the border, as we are doing again now. But we're not out of the woods yet. This new variant of concern is a moment to pause, be sure that we have vaccines that work, and then hopefully we'll be able to carry on. But we're doing what is necessary to protect the health and safety of all Canadians.
Right. Again, as you know, the question was about get the committees to get the legislation passed before the break in about 13 days. But we'll see what happens. I know that's not your main job. Minister Mendicino, I do appreciate it. All eyes on what the U.S. does tomorrow morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Evan.